Most people who are worried about their blood sugar have already made changes. They cut the juice. They stopped eating white bread. Some gave up dessert completely. A few even stopped eating breakfast because they read somewhere that it might help. They are trying. They are paying attention. They are doing what they believe is right. And then there is their morning coffee. Nobody ever questions the coffee. It has no sugar. It has no calories if you drink it black. It is just coffee. How could coffee possibly be part of the problem or part of the solution? Here is what stopped me. A large study that followed more than 100,000 adults for over a decade found that people who drank coffee regularly had a significantly lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes than people who did not drink it at all. Not slightly lower, meaningfully lower. But here is the part that almost no one is talking about. The same study, and the research that followed it, showed that the benefit was not equal for everyone. 2 people, same coffee, same amount, completely different results, because of when they drank it and how it was made. There are 2 specific mistakes that millions of people over 60 are making with their coffee every single morning. And those mistakes may be quietly erasing the one metabolic benefit they were getting without even knowing it. I am going to tell you exactly what those mistakes are. I'm going to explain in simple terms why they matter so much after 60. And I'm going to give you a specific protocol you can start using tomorrow morning. Please stay with me through this entire conversation, because by the time we finish, you are going to look at your morning coffee very differently. I am Dr. Richard Ben. I have spent my career studying how the human body changes after 60. And what those changes mean for the health decisions you make every single day. Today, I want to start by telling you something about blood sugar and aging that I wish every older adult understood. Most people think type 2 diabetes is something that just happens, a genetic sentence or the result of years of eating badly. The truth is more complicated and more hopeful. Here's what the research actually shows. Insulin sensitivity, your body's ability to use glucose efficiently, declines with age, even in people who are not diabetic, even in people who eat well and exercise regularly. By the time you reach 70, your cells respond to insulin noticeably differently than they did at 40. The system still works, but it has less room for error. Think of insulin as a key, and think of your muscle and liver cells as doors that glucose needs to enter in order to be used as fuel. When you are younger, that key turns the lock smoothly. Glucose enters, energy is produced, blood sugar stays steady. After 60, the lock gets stiffer. The key still works, but it has to work harder. Your body has to produce more insulin to do the same job. This is why fasting blood sugar numbers that seem fine at 55 start creeping upward at 65. The key is the same. The lock has changed. And here is what makes the morning so important. The first 2 hours after you wake up are the most metabolically vulnerable window of the entire day. Your cortisol rises at waking. That is natural. Cortisol is a hormone that prepares your body for the day. But cortisol also raises blood glucose. It is part of your body's design. In a younger, insulin-sensitive person, the system handles this smoothly. The glucose rises. Insulin responds. The glucose is cleared. After 60, that morning glucose rise is harder to clear. And whatever you eat or drink in that first hour either helps the situation or makes it worse. I want you to drop a comment right now. Tell me 2 things. How old are you? And has your doctor ever mentioned your fasting blood sugar or told you that you are pre-diabetic? I read every single comment on this channel. Everyone. Your answer matters here. Let me tell you what the research actually found. A major meta-analysis, a study that combined the data from multiple large trials across hundreds of thousands of adults, found that habitual coffee drinkers had a 25 to 29% lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes compared to people who did not drink coffee. 25 to 29% lower. Let me say that differently. That is not a rounding error. That is the difference between receiving a diagnosis that changes how you eat, how you travel, how you think about every meal for the rest of your life, and a life where that conversation with your doctor never has to happen. Now, here is where it gets more specific. The researchers wanted to understand why. Was it the caffeine? Was it the antioxidants? Was it something about the kind of people who drink coffee? What they found pointed to a specific group of compounds in coffee called chlorogenic acids. And when they looked more carefully at the data, something became clear. The people who saw the strongest blood sugar protection were not just drinking coffee. They were drinking it in a specific way, at a specific time, with a specific preparation method. The people who were canceling the benefit, without knowing it, were making one of two very specific mistakes. I am going to explain both of them. But first, I need to show you exactly why this happens inside your body, because understanding the mechanism is what turns a scary statistic into something you can actually do something about. Coffee contains compounds called chlorogenic acids. These are not present in significant amounts in most other foods. They are specific to coffee. And after 60, they interact with your metabolism in a way that matters more than most people realize. Here is what chlorogenic acids do. They slow the absorption of glucose in your intestinal tract. Think of your small intestine as a highway. Along that highway are multiple entry ramps, each one feeding glucose directly into your bloodstream after a meal. Chlorogenic acids narrow those entry ramps. The glucose still gets in, but it enters more gradually, more gently, without the sharp spike that overwhelms an already stiff insulin response. But here's the part that surprised even me when I first read the research. Chlorogenic acids also activate something in your muscle cells called GLUT4 transporters. I know that sounds complicated. Let me make it simple. GLUT4 transporters are the doors on your muscle cells that let glucose in. The same doors that insulin is supposed to open. Chlorogenic acids help those doors open more easily. They make the lock more responsive to the key. This is why black coffee consumed before a meal may actually reduce the glucose spike from that meal. It prepares the system before the food arrives. But this benefit comes with a condition, a very specific condition that almost nobody talks about. The benefit depends on how the coffee is prepared, and that takes us to the mistake I have been holding since the beginning of this video. I will explain it in layer 3. But first, layer 2. Because this is where the timing mistake lives, and it is the mistake most people make every single morning without realizing it. Remember what I told you about cortisol. Every morning, in the first 30 to 60 minutes after you wake up, your cortisol is at its highest point of the day. This is called the cortisol awakening response. It is completely natural. Your body is preparing itself for activity. Here is where the problem begins. Caffeine also triggers a cortisol response. When you drink your coffee in the first 30 minutes after waking, which is what most people do, you are adding caffeine's cortisol effect on top of the cortisol that is already peaking naturally. The result is an amplified cortisol spike, and cortisol raises blood glucose. So the very coffee you are drinking to support your blood sugar may be producing a cortisol-driven glucose rise in the first 30 minutes, before the chlorogenic acid benefit has even had time to work. Think of cortisol as a fire that burns naturally every morning. You need some of that fire. It gets you out of bed. It gives you energy for the day. But pouring caffeine onto that fire in the first 30 minutes is like adding fuel to a flame that did not need more fuel. The fire burns too hot. Your blood glucose rises, and the window when coffee could have helped you has already passed. The fix is not complicated. Wait 45 to 60 minutes after waking before your first cup. Let the cortisol peak pass. Let the natural fire settle. Then add the coffee. That 45-minute shift changes everything. But even perfect timing cannot save you from the preparation mistake, and that is layer 3, the one I promised you at the beginning. This is the layer that surprises almost everyone. Not all coffee is equal when it comes to blood sugar. And the difference is not about the brand. It is not about the roast. It is not about whether it is organic. It is about the filter. Unfiltered coffee, French press, boiled coffee, espresso with fine grounds, mocha pot, contains significant amounts of compounds called cafestol and cahuil. These are natural oily compounds that exist in coffee beans. They give unfiltered coffee that rich, heavy, full-bodied taste that many people prefer. Here's the problem. Cafestol impairs insulin secretion, and it reduces insulin sensitivity. Research published in the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that cafestol directly interferes with the receptors in your pancreas that are responsible for responding to glucose. In plain English, cafestol makes the insulin system work less efficiently. And remember, after 60, your insulin system is already working with less capacity than it had at 40. You cannot afford to add something that makes it worse. Now here is the part that matters most. Paper filters remove cafestol and cahuil before the coffee reaches you. A standard drip coffee machine with a paper filter. A pour-over with a paper cone. These methods trap the oily compounds in the paper. What flows through into your cup is the chlorogenic acids, the antioxidants, the compounds that help your blood sugar, without the compounds that work against it. The person drinking French press coffee every morning, believing they are choosing the more artisanal, healthier option because it retains more antioxidants, may be canceling the metabolic benefit entirely. This is the preparation mistake. Simple paper filter. Every time. 3 layers, working at the same time. Chlorogenic acids improving how your cells absorb glucose. The cortisol timing problem silently raising blood sugar in the first 30 minutes. And cafestol in unfiltered coffee quietly working against the insulin system that was already asking for less resistance, not more. Together, over months and years, these 3 layers explain why 2 people can drink the same amount of coffee and get completely different results. Now I want to talk about what your body may already be telling you, because elevated blood sugar does not announce itself with pain, but it does communicate, and learning to read those signals may be the most important thing you do after watching this video. I want to walk through 5 signs with you. For each one, I will tell you what most people assume it means, and what it might actually be telling them. The first sign is energy that crashes about 90 minutes after a meal. You eat breakfast. You feel okay at first. Then, about an hour to an hour and a half later, you feel heavy, tired, like you could sit down and close your eyes. Most people blame the size of the meal, or the fact that they did not sleep well. Here is what may actually be happening. When blood sugar spikes sharply after a meal, insulin has to work hard to bring it back down. Sometimes it overcorrects. The blood sugar drops below where it started. That sharp drop is what causes the crash. If this pattern happens consistently after meals, especially after breakfast, it is a metabolic signal worth paying attention to. The second sign is thirst that does not go away. You drink your coffee, you have a glass of water, and you still feel thirsty an hour later. Most people assume they are just not drinking enough. When blood glucose rises above normal, the kidneys work harder to filter and remove the excess. That process requires more fluid. The thirst is real, and it has a specific origin. The third sign is waking more often at night to urinate. People attribute this to age, to prostate, to bladder sensitivity. Sometimes it is those things, but if you noticed increased thirst around the same time that nighttime urination increased, if those 2 changes came together, the kidney glucose connection is worth raising with your doctor. The fourth sign is blurred vision that comes and goes. It is better in the morning. It gets worse after certain meals. You have blamed it on needing a new glasses prescription. Elevated glucose affects the fluid balance in the lens of your eye. It changes the focal length. The blurring is temporary and reversible, but if it comes and goes with meals, it is not a vision problem. It is a metabolic signal. The fifth sign is tingling or numbness in your feet or hands. Many people accept this as circulation problems or early arthritis. What most people do not know is that peripheral nerve sensitivity to elevated glucose can begin years before a formal diabetes diagnosis. The nerves in the feet and hands are among the first to be affected. This sign alone is not a diagnosis, but combined with 2 or 3 of the others I just described as a pattern over weeks and months, it is a conversation worth having with your doctor. If 2 or more of these felt familiar while I was describing them, please do not explain each one away as a separate, unrelated part of aging. The pattern is what matters. And now, let me tell you about a patient who changed how I think about morning coffee entirely. Her name is Margaret. She is 67 years old, a retired school librarian from Charlotte, North Carolina. Organized, thoughtful, the kind of person who researches everything before making a decision. Margaret did not come to see me because of her blood sugar. She came because she could not lose weight, despite doing everything she had been told to do. She had given up sweets. She was walking every morning. She ate salads for lunch. She did not drink alcohol. "Doctor," she told me at that first appointment, "I am doing everything right, and nothing is changing." Her fasting glucose had been quietly climbing for 3 years. Her last number was 108, technically in the normal range, but her previous doctor had flagged it as something to watch. Margaret had a French press coffee maker. She had used it for 11 years. She drank 2 large cups every morning, starting within minutes of waking up, before she had eaten anything. She was proud of it. She had read that French press coffee retained more antioxidants than drip coffee. She believed she was making the healthy choice. Nobody had ever asked Margaret 2 specific questions. How do you brew your coffee? And how soon after waking do you drink it? I asked both. We made just 2 changes, nothing else: paper filter instead of French press, and a 45-minute wait after waking before the first cup. That was it. No medication change, no dramatic diet overhaul, no giving up her coffee. 3 months later, her fasting glucose came back at 99, from 108 to 99. She called my office the day the results came in. "Doctor," she said, "I didn't give up anything. I just changed when and how." There was a pause. Nobody told me the French press was the problem. I thought I was doing it right. She was doing it right. With the information she had been given, nobody had given her the complete picture. That is exactly why this channel exists. Mid-video CTA. If this conversation is giving you something you did not have before, a piece of the picture you are missing, please give it a like and subscribe to this channel. Every single week, I bring you the complete clinical information that your doctor genuinely believes in, but simply does not have 17 minutes in an appointment to explain. No supplements to sell, no products to push. Just the science, explained clearly for you. And tell me in the comments, have you been drinking unfiltered coffee, French press, espresso, mocha pot? For how long? I want to hear your story. Here is the complete plan. 5 steps. Write these down or save this video. These are the exact changes I walked Margaret through. Step 1. Wait 45 to 60 minutes after waking before your first cup of coffee. This is the most important step, and it is the one most people resist because coffee is the first thing they reach for in the morning. Here is what I want you to think about. Your cortisol is already doing its job in that first 30 minutes. It is waking your body up. It is preparing your systems for the day. It does not need caffeine's help during that window. Wait until the peak has passed, then enjoy your coffee. The most common mistake, drinking coffee before getting out of bed or brewing it while still in your pajamas and drinking it within 5 minutes of waking. This is when cortisol amplification is at its worst. Use that first 45 minutes to drink a glass of water, eat a light breakfast, move gently, then sit down with your coffee. Step 2. Switch to paper-filtered coffee every time. Drip coffee machine with a paper filter, pour over with a paper cone. These are the two best options. The paper removes cafestol and cawiol before the coffee reaches you. What flows through is the benefit, without the compounds that work against your insulin system. The most common mistake: believing that French press or espresso is healthier because it is richer, more flavorful, or retains more antioxidants. What it retains is the problem. A basic paper filter costs almost nothing. The return on that change is measurable in your blood work. Step 3. Drink it black, or as close to black as you can. Sugar and flavored syrups trigger an immediate insulin response. This directly cancels the glucose moderating effect you are trying to create. If you cannot tolerate black coffee, a small amount of plain cream, no sweetener, is acceptable. The fat in cream does not trigger the same insulin response that sugar does. Avoid flavored creamers. Avoid sweetened plant milks. Read the label. If it has added sugar or flavoring, it works against the protocol. Step 4. Drink your coffee before your first meal, not after. The chlorogenic acid benefit is strongest when coffee is consumed 15 to 30 minutes before eating. It prepares the glucose absorption pathways before the meal arrives. Most people drink their coffee with or after breakfast. This is the normal habit, but it means the mechanism works backwards. The coffee arrives after the glucose spike, not before it. The sequence that works: wake up, wait 45 minutes, drink your paper-filtered black coffee, wait 15 to 30 minutes, then eat breakfast. This is the sequence Margaret changed. This is the sequence the research supports. Step 5. Know your numbers. Ask for 2 specific tests. Write these down. I want you to have the exact words when you see your doctor. The first test is a fasting glucose with HbA1c. Fasting glucose shows your blood sugar right now. HbA1c shows your 3-month average. Together, they give your doctor a complete picture. The second test is a fasting insulin level. This is not routinely ordered, but it measures how hard your pancreas is working to manage your blood sugar, and it can detect insulin resistance before the glucose numbers even look abnormal. Tell your doctor. I have been reading about blood sugar and insulin resistance after 60. I would like a fasting glucose, an HbA1c, and a fasting insulin level. That is not an unusual request. That is you advocating for yourself with the right language to do it clearly. One note for those of you who cannot tolerate caffeine: the chlorogenic acid benefit is present in decaf coffee as well. The cortisol concern is smaller. The paper filter rule still applies. Decaf with a paper filter, timed before breakfast, is a fully valid version of this protocol. Everything I have shared with you today is based on published, peer-reviewed research. It reflects my honest clinical perspective after many years of working with older adults. It is educational. It is not a diagnosis of your specific situation. It is not a prescription. If you have already been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, please discuss any changes to your diet or routine with your physician before starting. Coffee does interact with certain diabetes medications, including metformin in some cases. Your doctor needs to know what you are doing. If any of the warning signs I described felt familiar, if 2 or 3 of them are part of your daily experience, please use this video as the reason to call your doctor this week. Not a substitute for that call. You are now better equipped for that conversation than you were when you pressed play. Use that. You may be watching this because a number came back from your last blood test that quietly frightened you. Maybe your doctor used the word pre-diabetic and then moved on to the next item before you had time to ask your questions. Maybe someone in your family has been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and you have been wondering in the back of your mind whether it is coming for you too. Or maybe you have simply been drinking your coffee every morning for years, the same way at the same time, and nobody ever told you that 2 small changes to that one habit could make a measurable difference in your blood sugar numbers. I want to say something to you directly. None of this is your fault. The appointments are short. Nobody draws the diagram. Nobody explains the cortisol awakening response or the difference between filtered and unfiltered coffee in the context of insulin sensitivity. Nobody asks what kind of coffee maker you use. The system did not give you this information. You were working with what you had. Now you have more. You watched this entire video. You stayed through the science. You stayed through Margaret's story. You stayed through all 5 steps. That is not passive behavior. That is what it looks like when a person refuses to let their health be managed by incomplete information, by habits that were formed decades ago and never questioned, by a system that is genuinely doing its best but does not have enough time to tell you everything you deserve to know. That is exactly the person this channel was built for. Tell me in the comments, are you going to try the paper filter and the 45-minute wait? Or have you already been making changes to your morning routine and noticed a difference in your energy or your blood sugar numbers? Both paths belong here. Both stories matter. And if you know someone who starts every morning with French press coffee because they read somewhere that it was the healthier choice, please send them this video, not to take away their coffee, to give them what this conversation gave you, the complete picture. Take care of yourselves and drink your coffee the right way.